Welcome, everyone. Final event for Girls in Tech Australia of 2022 has kind of crept up on me. It's just a little bit sad, but hey, we're going to make this one count. It's going to be a good one. To start us off and to the acknowledgement of country, I'm conscious she's tech checking as we go. We've got some incredible hosts in DS, incredible partners in DS who are having us here tonight. How amazing is this venue and spread? So thank you very much to them. And here is Erin Nash, partnership. And if it weren't for kind of partners and sponsors like them, events like tonight wouldn't happen, and really important conversations like the one we're going to have tonight wouldn't happen either. So big clap for DS and thank you very much. I'm seeing a few thumbs up in the background, so I'm hoping that's good news. Excellent. So we're here tonight to talk about imposter syndrome. This is a backup of one of our probably most successful girl boss nights of this year. It definitely the room took over, I think it's fair to say, and everyone kind of had a story to share and a sentiment. So we wanted to pick up on that. So no pressure, guys, but that's on you guys, or not. Don't worry. Don't panic or have imposter syndrome. It's safe space. And to kind of lead us in the discussion, we've got an incredible panel of very diverse. Got David, or otherwise known as DMAC, CTO and co-founder of Crystal Delta and Masterly. Masterly is an edtech product and services company, and Crystal Delta is a software engineering company creating products and services founded on the principle of extreme ownership, owning the outcome and essentially doing whatever it takes. Crystal Delta has 3 offices in India, USA, Princeton, and 1 here in Melbourne. I always have mad respect for a business starter, so congratulations, that's insane. Loves technology and working with people and creating high functioning teams, working with many startups, and outside of work has a wife and 2 girls and is a mad sportsman, and I believe qualified for the World Championships representing Australia in Scotland next year. Wow. In what?
In cycling.
In cycling. Wow. Cool. So many hidden talents. And then we've got the amazing Sarah and Tori from the Expansive Space. This year, like, here's respect, right? This year, they both gave up their executive roles in e-commerce retail to fulfill their life's purpose of creating the expansive space. After more than a decade of individual personal development journeys, they've come together to share all their knowledge and wisdom with the people there, which is somewhat incredible. Their mission is to help activate women to step into their full power of authenticity and connect with their true life's purpose by aligning their life with their core values. So welcome, panel.
Thank you.
All right. That page is gone. I'm so used to hosting events online, and don't you love it? Because you have two screens and you can kind of put your notes up and you're still looking at the camera and no one knows. Like, real life is a bit of a cluster, but that's okay. We'll get through it. Tonight, I've pre-warned everyone on the panel that I've got literally 2 pages of questions, which I'm quite happy not to ask. It's your night. If you want to ask a question, totally do it. Raise your hand, let us know. For our virtual audience, Nat is there. She is on the other side. Hi, guys, back there. Please just pop them in the chat and Nat will give me a little holler and a wave and we will ask that too, because tonight is a carry on, like I mentioned, about imposter syndrome and how we actually combat it. We want you all to walk away feeling empowered with some tools that resonate with you that you can take back to your life and, you know, hopefully apply and feel that little bit more confident than when you walked in the room. That's the aim. We can do that. Easy. All right. I thought it would be worthwhile starting off just with kind of defining what imposter syndrome is. And it's loosely defined as kind of doubting your abilities, feeling inadequate, but at the same time having major success in that thing. Like it's like such a juxtaposition of kind of, hey, you're successful, it's validated externally, but internally you just are not feeling it. And you'd think one would kind of counteract the other, but there just seems to be this cutoff point in between the two, right? So the more you kind of succeed, sometimes the more the imposter syndrome grows and you just become more and more stressed out with it. So tonight, I think we've kind of, hang on, I'll stop, I'll pause. Who's experienced it before? Who does this feeling resonate with? Okay, it's a lot of people. All right, so we all go through it. I think the part that where it shifts is when it actually starts to become debilitating, when it actually starts to stop us doing something that we want to do, when we're in a meeting room and we're not asking the question or saying the thing that we feel is the right thing to ask, but we don't want to sound silly, so we just be quiet or we don't put ourselves forward. And that's the point that we would really, really love to nip in the butt and stop, so you can be authentic and say the things that you're so smart and you're qualified to be in that room and say. And as Kavita so well said, take your seat. Like I love that. So I might start with you, Kavita. Now, you made the decision to move to Australia from India to pursue your master's career. I'd imagine, while nervous and I think, you know, looking forward to a big trip, you'd kind of be in a good space, right? Like you're ready to take on this challenge, you're about to pursue it. What happened once you got here?
Oh, absolutely. So growing up as a child, as you can imagine, most childs, we're outgoing, extroverted, and I was a bit of a handful, as my parents love to remind me. So at the age of 21, and this is kind of not the norm here, but in India, it's very common for people to do your bachelor's and then consecutively, you know, quick follow. Why not do your master's? I know. And then use that as a lovely entry into the workforce. So I was very excited. I negotiated this with my parents, who were not happy, but then finally got on board, and I was finally here. What happened next was I was in for a very rude and a very interesting awakening. So I landed in Melbourne Uni, and I had one of my first classes, which was Introduction to Change Management. And as part of this class, the lecturer decided a good way for us to get to know each other was to help us stand in sections and help us say, you know, how old we were, kind of, so that we would get to know one another. And this would be the sort of good icebreaker that we needed. But what happened then was we were a group of about 50, and there were 5 people under the age of 30, which made me think, oh my God, should I be here? And also then, why didn't I just be a chef? Like, what is it? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. But quite naturally, that was the first thing that came to mind. Like, this is a lot, and everybody seems to have so much more experience than me, life experience, work experience, and fair enough. And I'm like, why do we do masters so early in India? But that was my first, I guess, instinct, or the first time I encountered what I now know as imposter syndrome. So
I'd love to keep you talking if I can for just one moment, because I'd imagine even just doing the masters, like there's a goal and an outcome you're focused on, right? So all the imposter syndrome, it's there, it's real, it's don't
Oh,
you're
yes.
feeling it, but you've kind of got this big thing you can focus on. What happened then when you went into the workforce here? What happened next where you don't kind of have that objective in mind? You know what I mean?
Yep. I know exactly what you mean. So when I started working in the workforce, one thing that happened was I kind of applied, got accepted into a company which shall remain unnamed, financial institution, really lovely, hired about 50 grads, and I was very excited. I was like, yes, I made it. And then I realized there was a rumor that was, not everyone gets a job here. You're a grad, you kind of have to prove your mettle, and you kind of have to earn your keep. And then immediately I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And then, of course, I'm Indian. We're very competitive. If you don't know an Indian who's competitive, just go to a cricket match. They're very passionate. We're very competitive. And I was very like, right, Hunger Games. No. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I take it back. I should have been a chef. No. But I was very focused on this goal that, I need to convert this into a role. And mind you, I realized that not many people looked like me because I'm a migrant. I'm not from Australia. Not many people could understand what I was saying. I have quite a thick accent. I Indianize everything. Any accent will sound like this from my mouth. And then I found it quite hard to fit in because even networking in this company, you had to know AFL, you had to know NFL. And I was like, well, I don't know these things. I have to Google this thing. However, I found it quite challenging. And the way I coped with this was burning the candle at both ends. So if there was a KPI, I would go above that KPI and I would be that grad who would constantly be like, excuse me, do you need help? Excuse me, do you need a coffee? Excuse me, and it wasn't, some of it was, I'm an extrovert. I enjoy meeting new people. But part of it was also, I felt I had to earn my seat at the table. So that's how I felt. Yeah.
See how it just started to flourish and bloom, not in the right way. Tori, I believe you kind of had a similar experience. So you were promoted early in your career because you had a manager leave and you quickly had two people reporting to you, and then before you knew it, 19. And I know Kavita just spoke about working a lot. How did you kind of find yourself dealing with that, and what was the mental state like at that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I really resonated with the fact that even the validation of getting a role isn't enough. Like, I had the role, and you'd think that having that validation is like, great, I feel good in this, right? And feel deserving. But unfortunately, I went into this, and like you mentioned, I only had two people reporting to me, and the company was growing so rapidly and things were changing all the time. My team was growing and I was literally learning on the go as we were growing. And of course, that starts to get into my head like, well, I got the role here and it's not this like role. It's like, I'm going to have to grow this whole thing. I'm learning. I'm trying to like push the company forward and everything. And so it was like, I'm never good enough. And it was like, should I have had this role if they had have known that it was going to grow to this kind of size in this time period? Because that was in like less than 2 years. So for me, it really like my symptoms were like you mentioned, overworking, never saying no. I didn't ever want to say no to my boss and disappoint someone. Like I always want to be like, yep, I can do it. Yes, I can do it. Yes, the team can do it. Like overwork. And it was like not sleeping. Like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh, have I done that? Like, oh my gosh, and it's just like not sleeping well, running on caffeine, not like prioritizing meals, like skipping lunches, like just a lot of stress and just constantly trying to prove myself, basically.
Is this resonating with anyone? Anyone kind of feeling? I see a lot of nods. Maybe raise your hand virtually. Sarah, you kind of felt like you fluked it. Was it fluke or luck?
Yeah,
Fluke.
Yeah.
Tell us about your fluke career, please.
So up until probably the last year, I thought I had fluked my entire 10-year career working for a couple of different companies. And that's how imposter syndrome has really shown up for me. So backstory, probably around, it was 10 years ago, I started an Instagram account that went absolutely viral. I was at 300,000 followers in months back in 2012. And I just kind of thought, oh, I fluked that. I don't know what I did. I just posted some photos and I did some hashtags and look at this audience. And I couldn't quite acknowledge that I had built something quite bigger than what I had imagined. And then from there, I was poached online by a woman who owned a business. And she said to me, "Oh, I'd love for you to come work for me." And I was like, "Oh, I just fluked that with my account. Like, I don't know if I can do that with you." And social media management wasn't a thing at the time. And she was like, "Oh, come on board and, we'll just see how we go. We'll start off with a couple of days a week." And I was doing uni at the time. And then I was like, "I don't know if I can do this." And then I did it, and I did it again, and I did it again. And we built 13 different Instagram accounts at millions of followers by the end of it. And then that wasn't enough for me to think that I had done a good job. Also, social media management, again, wasn't a thing. So I was actually building a whole role in itself. And I would talk to my friends, and friends would be like, "Oh yeah, like that's what you're doing. Like, oh, that's, you're just posting some photos on Instagram." And that would validate this imposter syndrome. "Yeah, I'm just posting some photos on Instagram. That's all I'm doing." And then from there, I went to a lunch, and like whilst I was working for this company, and then I was approached by another woman. And she said, "Hey, I'd love for you to come work for me." And I was like, "Me?" She was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh," and in my head, I was like, "Oh, she just liked me. We just got along. We had a good lunch." And then I was like, "No, sorry." I still couldn't see that an owner of a business was looking at me and saying, "I see potential in this woman." And then she brought me on. And from there, that's probably where I experienced the most of my imposter syndrome, because I was quickly managing accounts. I was quickly promoted into management of people. I don't know how to manage people. I just manage Instagram accounts. I've just learned that I can do that. I don't know about people. And then from there, I had to sit there and be like, "Oh, I've just fluked it. Like, they don't have anybody else to take on this role, so I'll do it." Took on one person, two people, it took 12 people, and I still couldn't believe that I was managing people. I'm like, "Oh, we just have conversations, and I delegate and I organize and I'm executing all these big projects," and I still couldn't believe it. And then probably the biggest one for me was then being asked to be an executive for the company. And I still thought it was because they just liked me as a person and not because what I was doing. And, I'd rock up to meetings and be like, "I'm in a room with CEOs and COOs and heads of all departments." Tori was a part of that team. And I did not feel like I had a seat at that table. And I was sitting here talking about Instagram likes, and everyone's talking about logistics and packages going lost and all of this. And I still didn't feel it. I kind of looked at myself, I'm like, "Wow, like you've just fluked all of this." And everybody else really validated that for me. But I mean, I guess towards the end of that, I had built this really strong relationship with myself. And that's what helped me realize that's what the voice was. It was imposter syndrome. And I can now acknowledge that and be like, it wasn't because I got along with some people, that I had actually put intelligence and skill and strategy into everything that I did. And that's what got me to where I am now. And, I feel like if I hadn't have combated that, I don't know if I would have been able to build the courage to leave that job and start my own business. So yeah.
I love your story. I think that's insane. I want to come back to as well that external validation versus what we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
But DMAC, I'm not picking on you. This is
Yeah.
totally a safe space. But when we spoke, there is not an ounce of arrogance or anything in this man whatsoever. Safe space, safe space. But he's like, "I don't think I've really experienced imposter syndrome." No, we figured out since, no, there's been plenty of moments because it comes up for all of us. But I think the point that I found so interesting, you're not even consciously aware that you're just focused on the outcome that's in, the objective that's in front of you, achieving that outcome. And it's a very rational process where emotion's stripped out of just like, here is what I know, here is what I don't know. This is what I need to learn. It's just very matter of fact. And it was kind of an epiphany for me, which is why I'm sharing it for all of you as well. But do you want to talk a little bit to, I guess, even just growing your career and kind of, it's just always been, it sounds really fast paced and there's always something going on.
Well, yeah, like you said, when I first heard the term and the topic imposter syndrome, I was thinking, I don't think I've ever felt this before. And particularly the last year, I've been on a project where we demo what we do for the day every day. So we write code, we demo it, we get feedback, and it's brutal feedback. And then you go and you fix it the next day. Next day you demo again. And it's just been this cycle like for the whole past year of just working out what needs to be done, demoing, getting feedback and continuing. And other projects, I have goals that I'll set and I'll work out exactly what needs to be done to meet that goal and just charge at it, getting stuff done. Might not be me personally, might be team members and delegating and that sort of thing. And then we reach that goal and we celebrate that milestone, and then we set the next goal and we keep going. And yeah, that cycle of just working out what needs to be done, doing, and then getting feedback always showing what you've done and getting feedback, and you're kind of knowing exactly where you stand because you are getting that feedback all the way along the way. But then hearing these stories and talking to other people, there's definitely been times where I felt it, particularly early on in my career. I had a similar thing where I was a graduate, and I was the only one left on this Telstra account on the company I worked in at the time. And everyone left onto this bigger project, and I was the only one left on this Telstra account. And all of a sudden, this big project came along, and then I had to do the requirements gathering, architecture, recruit the team, run the team, work out what needs to be done, do the costing estimates, everything right from first project. And it was not the biggest project, but it was still like end to end, saw the whole project end to end. And that kind of massive imposter at the start. Had these people in the team that were way older than me. And I was asking them for advice, like, oh, how do you do this thing? What's the best solution for this? And they're like, I don't know, mate, you tell me. And I'm like, I'm just a grad. Like, so yeah, that was interesting, really helped me grow in my career. And once we delivered that project, yeah, that gave me a lot of confidence for the rest of my career. But then there was another time where I was presenting in Canada, in Montreal. I wasn't meant to be presenting. One of my colleagues was meant to be presenting, and he couldn't get his visa. And so he couldn't actually make the presentation. I found out the night before his visa didn't come through. And then I had to learn this topic and present to this audience in Canada, and it was all streamed on YouTube. And I just felt like the biggest imposter. Like everyone else in my mind knew the topic way more than me. And yeah, that was just very interesting. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my career, was get through that presentation. So massive imposter.
Right there on a stage, it's very hard. You know, you literally got people looking at you for it. I guess it's sort of thinking of external validation versus what we tell ourselves. Like Kavita, when you had to do a bit of a review on your performance, tell us a little bit how that went and how the external validation maybe changed things a little bit for you.
Sure. Okay, so we're going back. This is when I'm a grad, right? Remember Hunger Games, what I spoke about? Yes. So this is when I was a grad, Hunger Games going on. I have my 6-month review. And my mindset at then was, you know what? I need to justify my place in this company. I need to justify and make sure I have a job. So everything I wrote in this review, I thought I did a fantastic job. I was very thorough. I said, I contributed here, I helped here, I did this, I did that. What I actually did though, was these were my KPIs and this is where I was performing. So what I wrote was everything, justification, please hire me. The subtext of everything, if you read between the lines, was, please don't fire me. I'm great. I'm so great. However, when I had my review with my manager, and I think this was very much the turning point for me and was very powerful for me. So I'm sitting across from my manager, a woman I respect a lot, and she was herself a very young leader. She takes a look at my review and I realized she's printed it out. And I was like, oh, why did you print it out? And what she's done then is read back every single line that I had written. But my context was writing it as if, please don't fire me, please don't fire me. And the way she spoke it back to me was, this is your achievement. You've added value here. This is the difference you've made. This is how you helped us grow and impacted your team in a positive way. And I felt at that point, man, this is embarrassing. Why have I written this like this? and it gets more interesting. So what my leader then did for the next 10 minutes was, let's go to your computer. Let's rewrite this. And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. So I sat with her as I then typed every single line and redid my entire review. Yes, no one wants to be coached on their review by their boss, but it was the most powerful thing I ever experienced at that point in time, because up until then, I felt as an imposter. I didn't belong. I didn't fit in. I didn't look like most of the people in my department. I was having a really hard time. She made me feel like, you know what? You are here. You have a seat at the table. You've not come as part of a diversity quota. You have earned your right to be here. And I think that sense of achievement changed everything for me. And even till this day, that's how I write my reviews. Not a coaching session. That's not that's not what I'm talking about. But you know, just looking back and looking at the value I've added rather than, yeah, this is a justification. This is what my last 6 months were. And I think that mindset shift was very powerful. So if you're a leader or if you're new in the industry, this is one thing that I would recommend you do. Look back at your 6 months and look at the impact you've made and focus on that. And if you're a leader, maybe do this exercise with someone you think is having a bit of a moment where they're kind of underselling themselves.
I love that. I think it just highlights how much our thoughts are our beliefs. And when we're just thinking in this mindset of like, I just need to keep my job and please just keep me, it just changes the way we talk about ourselves. Who's ever said the phrase, I'm just going to fake it till I make it? All of us, right? Is there a better one, Tori? Why is I'll just fake it till I make it maybe not doing us any favors?
Yes, I love it. I feel like we're ready to change the narrative on this, because I used to use this a lot where I'm like, I'm going to fake it till I make it, fake it till I make it. And I think it's kind of setting ourselves up to think that making it is like this, I don't know, like this gold standard of confidence that only certain people in the population have. And like, it's so out of reach and everything like that. And it's like, confidence isn't knowing that I'm going to do something and I 100% know that I'm going to nail it and it's going to be perfect. That's not confidence. Confidence is knowing that you can go and try anything, do anything, walk into a room, and no matter what the outcome is, you have your own back. And you're like, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to try this. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to go for this job. I'm going to do this project. Like, and really just being able to say, but no matter what, it's not going to throw me. Even if it's disappointing, even if it's a failure, quote unquote, you know? So for me, it's really acting as if, and that's a lot of the work that we do, where you're doing a lot of like the visualization work. I love the self-reflection. I think that is so critical. The self-reflection work, the visualization work, and you just a lot of relationship to self-work where you're actually saying, I'm going to put on this, you know, I'm going to act as if, and I'm going to walk with confidence, but I'm going to walk with my fears and doubts because I'm always going to have them and we all have them. But people who learn to walk with their fears and doubts, acting as if, they're the ones that actually embody that confidence and grace and courage that we're all after.
No, I love it. Acting as if, new self-talk, thoughts are our beliefs.
Yes.
David, I think now that you're a leader and you're encouraging others, you talked a lot about not knowing something is okay. And it sounds like you've created an environment where there's freedom to fail and it's okay if you don't know something, that's totally fine. What would you recommend though to people who maybe don't find themselves in a similar environment to that, and how do they overcome those sort of feelings creeping in? Because I think that takes away a lot of the imposter syndrome when you're not trying to be something that you're not, and you can just fail and it's okay.
Yeah, I think most places I've seen and worked at, people at the end of the day, they just want the job to be done and they just want the outcome. And they don't mind if you don't know the answer. They just want you to tell them, I don't know the answer and I need help. So encouraging people just to say when they don't know, reach out and say, I need help here. And then I think from most places I've ever worked at, then you'll get the support that you need. Nobody's going to say, what, you don't know that? Has anyone ever said that? I've never heard anyone say, you silly person, you don't know that. You know,
there's a fear they will.
Goes, what do we need to do? Well, I've never seen it anyway.
Yeah.
Like, most people just pull up a chair and go, what do you need? What do you need to help? And they'll bring in whatever it is that you need. So I think when you are not unsure, then just putting your hand up and saying it is probably the first step.
Absolutely. I think that's probably one of the personal values that you hold, of just being okay not knowing everything, and or you know, being ready to learn and to take on new challenges. And Sarah, I know a turning point for you when you were kind of deep in the career mode, imposter syndrome at its finest, that there was a bit of a turning point to kind of then recognize what it is. How much did personal values play out in that? And I guess, how do they play out now that you've got your own business and it probably creeps back in? How do you keep them at bay? What role do values have in that?
Yeah, I guess for me, like I mentioned before, there was a lot of personal development that I did do, which really strengthened that relationship with myself. And through that, I learned what my fears were, what my limiting beliefs were. And I started to realize that when I was in a situation that pulled on that or tugged on that, it was just a situation that I believed was affirming that story. So, you know, if I had some sort of fear and I walked into a room and somebody said something that played on that, that's when these doubts would come online. And through strengthening that relationship with myself, I've got so much awareness now that when they come online, I don't buy into that dialogue of what it actually is. I can just look at that as an overall reporting tool and say, all right, Sarah, you've got some thoughts that are coming through, you're speaking to yourself in a negative way, let's not buy into those thoughts because they don't mean anything and they can feel like a truth. And this isn't an easy situation to talk yourself out of, but you sit there and say, okay, I know that I don't believe that. And this comes down to one of my core beliefs across so many different areas of these swaying truths that we can have and these anchoring truths that we can have. And what I mean by that is like when we're in a really high, vibrant state where like, I can do anything. I can do this. I've got a seat at this table. I deserve this. And then that same day you could be feeling really low and it's like, what am I doing? And how can one person have two truths that feel so strong? And it's about going, okay, they don't mean anything. How can I anchor myself back? And my method is by lifting my vibration up, by doing all the things that make me feel good and things that I love. And then just coming back to this anchoring truth, especially with imposter syndrome, is if I wasn't ready, I wouldn't have the opportunity. Like it wouldn't exist. So that's what I just constantly come back to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. All right, Kavita, you're now in a role where you problem solve for a living. Imposter syndrome's here. How would you problem solve it like it was a task? How would you
Why are
break
you
it
laughing?
down? Break down the data.
All right. Okay. So I love lists. If you are kind of like me, I love a good to-do. I love a good list. So what I like to do is use data points to help me if I'm ever feeling held back by imposter syndrome. And what I mean by this is, have you guys heard of opportunity cost? No? Yes? Yes. Very nerdy term, economics. Yes, let's get into it. So that's the first thing I look at. Like, what would I lose if I were to take up, say, an opportunity, like you pointed out, say, a new job, a promotion, speaking at a panel where you are the only non-CEO? Like, would I regret? or what's the cost of not going through with it? I think sometimes, especially I've seen in teams like women, we generally hold back, especially if we have an opinion that maybe is not popular or not aligned with the rest of the group, right? But in my case, and this is my personal preference, I find for me, if I hold back, the regret that I have about an opinion I haven't shared is way worse than if I shared something and people were like, yeah, okay, we'll consider that, but we're going to go through with this anyways. That's fine. I always feel the most amount of regret when I don't share anything. So the first thing I do is consider my opportunity cost. And trust me, this is something that I will follow. And that's my next part of the list. First thing I do is receive and record positive feedback. How often have we been in a review situation where someone's giving you positive feedback, but you're only kind of half listening because you're waiting for someone to say, you're great, but so you're waiting for that constructive feedback to drop. And what happens then is you're not paying attention to all the good stuff and you're only amplifying the constructive bit. Yes, you will get constructive feedback because we all have a lot of growing to do, and that's fine. But let's also start recording the positive stuff that we do. This could be even having a folder, perhaps called "Add a Girl." Like, I'm just kidding. Like, like just recording. You get an email from your sponsor, from your manager, someone you respect, thanking you for your work. Great, record it. Use that as a data point. Anything from your peer recognizing you to your team members thanking you in a post-it note. That is your positive feedback. And I think we need to record that rather than just amplifying the constructive. So that's the second step I would do. The third step is when you have a self-limiting belief, just look at that for a second. Just question your assumptions behind it. And at least for me, what I found by doing this is more often than not, they dissipate because they're assumptions. There's no fact to it most of the time. It could be something very self-limiting. Just examine that for a second and then compare that to the data you have. Compare it back to your Add a Girl folder. Compare it back to your positive reviews. Compare it back to your constructive feedback and just see, hey, do they match up? Is this adding up or not? The third thing, if you have a mentor, you have an ally, you have a peer you respect, get their feedback. That again is a data point for you to use. And that's kind of what I do to try and get over a self-limiting belief. The first time it's going to feel a bit odd. The second time you'll be done like in 2 minutes because you'll be so used to it and your brain will transform your self-limiting belief and really question it. Like, is this valid or is this just, am I just hungry? I don't know, but that tends to happen for me.
It's so true. Sometimes the negative pathway can just be like the least path of resistance, right? Like it's just easier to believe you're not good at something than to actually believe you're good at something like that. It's, if you're walking, it's like a clear path versus you kind of got to walk through the Amazon to believe the good one. It's just so much harder to get to the other side of. I love the idea. I'm going to start an Adam Girl. That's happening tomorrow. Atta girl doing it. Journaling and other tools. Tori, what would be some other techniques that you'd recommend for people to not just take the external validation and be able to keep it to clear that pathway of resistance so that the good is just as quick to come to and the negative gets bushy? What are other ways that people can start to do that?
Yeah, love it. I think everything that we kind of speak to, for us, we believe that there has been narratives that we've kind of grown up with, conditioning, all of that kind of stuff, and our experiences through life. They're kind of where you are today. And it kind of, it's like your self-worth. And that's how your self-worth has been determined. So for us, some of the tools that we do, and it's really about relationship to self, but we do it in two ways, where there's the programmed self that we like to get into. And that can be like inner child work, going through your experience in life where you have been knocked, where your confidence has dropped down, all of those kinds of things, where your limiting beliefs have come from, where your fears have come from, all of that kind of stuff. And then we also like to do shadow work. So things that you've kind of, someone has maybe bullied you in the past or put you down in the past, and you've gone, I can't put, like the too much syndrome for women is a huge one, where we just go, oh, I can't be too much. So then I'm just going to pop this over here and I'm just going to be as small as I can. And I'm not going to say anything in meetings, and I'm just going to rock up to the boardroom and just be like, no one look at me kind of energy. So we go through all of that. So that's what we call our program self. And then the other side of it for relationship to self is also developing a really strong toolkit, which is exactly what you're saying as well. So that's unique to you. Like, what are the practices of health, wellness, spirituality, whatever works for you? And again, I'm saying it like self-evaluation. Everything you just said was amazing. That can be a part of your toolkit. So can meditation. So can journaling, so can self-reflection at the end of your work day to see how did you show up, where could you do better, all of that kind of stuff. Walking in nature, it can be breath work, it can be just so many different tools and things like that that we like to use. We love to use visualizations and journal prompts in particular, but it's kind of coming at it two ways. So there's ways to raise your vibration and ways to raise like all of that up, and also just remove all the gunk, the things that are telling you that you're not worthy, the things that and it's all subconscious. So the thing is, like, all the conscious work that we can do is great, like it is honestly amazing, but it's only 5% of what we're capable of. Everything else is underneath. So you've really got to do the inner work to kind of go like, why do I not feel worthy? Why do I not feel deserving?
Why does my head go straight to the negative, not the
Yes,
positive?
exactly. Yeah. And it's you can dig and you can find these things. And for us, unblocking all of that has really been that we can just step into our worth and just go, that for me, all of that work has been what my imposter syndrome, I realized in hindsight after having all of these conversations, I'm like, it actually just disappeared because I have done all of that work. And it wasn't that I was like, I have imposter syndrome, I need to go do this work. It was just a byproduct of doing that inner work. And now, you know, we've started our own business this year. And so far, and I'm sure it will pop up, but so far I haven't had any imposter syndrome, even being here tonight, even like starting our Instagram, even like going into a brand new industry where I have no prior experience other than the personal development work and the professional development work I've done with my team. I can step into that and not feel like an imposter because I'm like, I know my worth. I know that I can do this and I know I'm on the right path. And that's just such a rewarding feeling to have as well.
Who wants to feel like Tori? I'd love to open up to questions. So while you're all kind of thinking of them, David, I might throw to you again. So now that you're kind of running and managing teams, are there ever moments where you maybe pick up that others are going through this? Like, are there any little signs or cues that you see? And what do you do as a leader to kind of support people?
Yeah, I think, you know, I hadn't really noticed it too much until hearing about this topic, and then knowing that actually people might be feeling this way. Because I normally just throw tasks at people and I'll say to people, I don't even know how to do this. So I need you to figure this out. And then I think they're then on that same level that, oh, he doesn't know. And they're then free. They've got a lot more freedom and they feel a lot safer. I just say, just come to me with what you find and ask questions. Make sure you ask questions. Just don't go away and do nothing. Just make sure you're always asking questions. So yeah, knowing up front that it's an unknown problem, I think puts them in a very safe space. But there are other tasks where you're giving them and you're like, what is that person doing? Like, it's been days or weeks and nothing's happened. So telling people that if something's not getting done, because to me, it's all about getting the job done. It's not really about the person. It's about the task or the job or the thing that we're building. So it's like, if you are stuck, if you're spinning your wheels, don't let it go more than half a day. Put your hand up and say that you need help. So giving people that environment that they feel safe, where they can speak up when they're unknown, and yeah, if it is something that we can help, we'll provide that help. It might be something, I'll see something, and one of my phrases is, "Oh, sucks to be you," it means that I don't know what the answer is. You're going to have to figure it out on your own. So yeah, that's but knowing that they have that freedom to ask questions, I think, is very important.
Absolutely. Kavita, in your role of leading and managing people, what signs do you see, and how do you try and even get in front of it potentially?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of years back, and this is now no longer Hunger Games, that's all in the past. Let's leave that behind. A couple of years back, pre-COVID, I was leading a team of which we had 2 grads who had come in, and they were on rotation for a period of time. And it just happened to be that one identified as female and the next one was male. And I sat them both down. They had similar experience. They had similar kind of interactions with the team, and their performance was, you could relatively compare, like both were great. Now, when I sat them down and when we did the review, and this is just an absolute cliche, isn't it? Let's call her Melissa. So Melissa comes in and she's like, I've had a great time with your team. I've had so much fun. I've learned so much. And these are my 10 growth areas for the next quarter. There's no question, what are your growths? She's like, here you go. I'm going to give this to you before you ask me. And when the man, let's call him David. So when David walks into the room, the body language is like, hey, I had a great time. I've had so much fun with your team. It's great. I'm awesome. And the vibe is very like, I'm awesome. I've had fun, which is actually true. They both had fun. They both received a lot of positive feedback. But Melissa was far more critical. And she was really underselling, what she had done and the impact she had. Did I make her look at her review? You bet I did. I was like, let's look at your review. And actually, a lot of her growth areas were actually areas she had performed really well in. She was just holding herself to really perfectionist standards. So that's one thing that I would do, is just lead with an example that they're familiar with, because it just helps crystallize this in the mind. However, on a slightly different note, as leaders in an organization, if you have the influence to make an impact, and I think this is where diversity comes in, it's very powerful for someone who is in a marginalized or in a more diverse, from either a racially diverse background, an ethnic background, a diverse gender identity, or a sexual orientation, and they just feel like a minority in the room. This is why we need to ensure that the definition of what a professional means is diverse enough to make space for everyone. If you don't see someone who looks like you, talks like you, having a seat at the table, it's going to be very hard for the next generation to believe that they have a seat at the table. So I think as leaders, if you are a leader, this is one thing I would highly encourage you to do. Examine our internal biases, because everyone has a bias. And it's just natural to, I guess, lean in towards the things you're most familiar with, the people you're most familiar with. But let's make space for everyone. And I think that's very, very powerful, because people who feel marginalized just have a more amplified imposter syndrome.
And it's never malicious. It's just,
it's absolutely
totally subconscious.
It's completely
so it's just bringing
subconscious bias.
Yeah, absolutely. Did we have any questions from the audience? I can keep going. Are there any online, Nat? Oh, okay. Go for it.
The imposter syndrome creeps in when people see that others are always there or always online. They'll see an email from the CEO at 11 p.m. or they'll see a Slack message at similar times, and then they'll feel the pressure essentially to have to meet that, and that I think is something that's creeping in to work a lot, especially in tech space where I work, and I've seen it in the team. So that's, to me, is one part of it that I love to know. Understanding that from where you are, you might still be actually at a cultural level.
Yeah.
But what advice would you have to give from my experience that at work on how they
I'll ask very politely whoever answers that question if they could try and sum it up for our virtual audience. That would
Okay.
be, no, you don't have a microphone. You're totally fine.
Yeah, the question or the statement was that people working in a remote environment or even not remote, there are times where the CEO might be responding late at night, and then people feel pressure that they're working that late, or they might get the message and I need to respond straight away. So yeah, it's a culture kind of thing. And what was the actual question?
The actual question is, I guess, rather than the question of culture.
Yeah.
It's like the
Just
pressure you feel to answer the question at 11 o'clock at night,
Yeah.
even though you,
There are, I mean, we've had this issue 100% at our company, and CEO would, he wakes up very early, or he might stay up very late, and he'll post something in a channel, Slack channel, and he doesn't mean for the person to respond to it straight away. It's asynchronous communication. He's like just posting it there because that's what's in his head at that time. And people are getting these messages going, I need to respond straight away. And they're staying up at past midnight trying to respond to CEO. And he didn't realize he was doing it. So it did become a big conversation at our workplace. And he was really, from his perspective, he's like, it's just come into my mind. I'm putting it out there. I don't want you to respond straight away. But if I don't post the message, then I'll forget about it. And then I won't actually get around to posting it. So he was more like, don't feel compelled to respond to it. Don't feel compelled to stay up till midnight just because I thought of something and put it in a channel. But it has been, I don't think we got to the right outcome or solution, because people do still see a message from a CEO and they feel like they need to respond. And also some of the language, he might ask a question and people are saying, oh, I must do that, when really it was a legitimate question. So even the language of how that asynchronous communication can be interpreted by the other person needs to be looked at as well. So
I can talk on that.
That's good.
So I can just give another example. So during COVID times, I worked at one of the financial institutions, and we had a bit of an urgent hypercare kind of approach because it was COVID, it was unprecedented times. There were lots of issues happening with our digital presence. And we had a similar thing happen where a lot of people with titles CEO, CTO would post or send emails out at all hours of the day and night. The way we tackled it was people who received these emails would speak up to their managers and say, what do you expect? What is the procedure here? Do you want me to dig into this? Or are you happy for me to wake up the next day, go about my day, and then pick this up? So we established with the person or the few people who were doing this, like kind of a social contract. If it's urgent, can you page this person? If it's not urgent, send us an email, but make sure that we're not going to respond to, we're not going to get back to you before 10 a.m. And what then happened, and sadly, this is where cultural shift comes in. The people who did send these out, the general managers, started adding to their email addresses. I work flexible hours. If I send you an email at 3 a.m., I do not expect you to respond at that time. And that was very powerful. So if you received it, you're like, a manager sent me this, and you saw that at the bottom of their email, you felt a bit reassured, like, okay, that's fine. I'll have someone look into this and work out a solution. But I think give direct feedback, because everyone wants to retain high-performing people, and no one wants people to get impacted just because the questions come up. Yeah. And it's time we make everyone accountable for that.
I think the tone from the top so important there.
Yeah.
I know I start every Slack that's outside of hours. Do not respond to me until
yeah.
you're working, but while it's in my brain, I need to get it out or it'll be lost forever. But I think you touched on a good point about hybrid work and working from home, and it kind of amplifies imposter syndrome because you're there on your own. You don't have your peers near you where you can kind of even just share the fact that, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here or anything like that. You're kind of a bit isolated. We spoke a little bit about the impact of hybrid work on imposter syndrome and how it makes us feel and how we can combat it. Did you want to talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. So
Do you remember what you said? I do.
do you remember what I said?
You said how it amplifies imposter syndrome.
Yes. So I noticed this just when COVID started, and we were just getting used to hybrid working and everyone was behind a screen. And I started noticing that people in my team would have their cameras off. And I was like, what's going on? And because I was part of a very corporate organization, they were feeling that, they're not either prepared enough, or they don't look the part for a corporate meeting. It was just all these random or seemingly random innocent topics that came up. So what I started doing is having one-on-ones and mental health check-ins with people, because it's so much more easier to pick up on signs of anxiety when you see them in the office, right? It's much harder to do it virtually. So rather than putting people on the spot and having a larger team meeting, we started splitting it up. We started having, let's not jump into work. Let's have a tea break and just talk about everyone's day. Let's talk about what COVID banana bread have you been making today? Did you make some sourdough? And started having a bit of a social conversation, which would be normal at a workplace, right? You'd see someone in the kitchen, you'd have a conversation. So doing regular mental health check-ins, that really helped. And also having smaller group discussions. And what I see now at DS, what we do really well is we have a social club, but you don't always have to be here. You can be remote, you can be in your location, but you have people doing the painting, you have people making terrariums. So you kind of feel connected and part of the team. And it's not really about doing a presentation or anything to do with pairing at work, but it's a fun activity that you're doing socially, staying connected, and also helps you stay a bit more social and in touch with your peers.
Absolutely.
Because did anyone else experience that when you come back from lockdown and you're like, what did I do with my hands? How do I do elbow?
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, we had a few questions online.
Two questions. First one is, when you're building something, sorry, got another question pop up. When you're building something that was recently globally nominated, how are there things you can do to help you feel like less of an imposter, or like that thing is less valid? I guess, how do you deal with global weight validation?
Global weight validation. I don't have
Like,
experience in that. David, I'm looking straight to
David,
you.
David,
Only from your Montreal story.
I don't understand the question. I think the question might be getting at, if you're building something that has been, recognized on a global scale, but it somehow still doesn't feel valid.
Still not feeling it.
How do you go about helping yourself feel like less of an imposter?
Maybe Sarah, this is your
Maybe back to the toolbox.
yeah, it's but you haven't looked at it on the
For me, I might be repeating myself a little bit on this one, but I personally think this almost just goes to show the level of depth that this comes from. It comes from such inner stories and the neural pathways that we've connected in our brains that literally make us think that we are not worthy and we are not deserving of something. And the thing is, a lot of the time we're seeking external validation, and we think that the next achievement or the next degree or the next piece of praise that you can get is going to make you feel good. And it does for like a couple minutes. Like, we've all had that high where you're like, thank you so much. And then all of a sudden you go back and you're like, and it just happens so quickly. And so this is why the work that we do is really about going to those deeper layers. It's about rewiring the neural pathways. It's about getting into the subconscious, because there would be narratives that whoever's asked this question online, like there'd be narratives that you have got going through your head that is not allowing you to really sit in that achievement that you've had. And we all have it. And it's totally normal. And there is work that we can do to get to the bottom of it, because how amazing would it be to be able to have those accomplishments and really be able to sit with it and embody that and know that you deserve it and know that you're worthy of it. And I feel like that's what I want everyone to be able to get to in business, for sure. Yes.
I had a slight malfunction, but I'm back. I actually missed a crucial part of my first initial story, which is actually so relevant to this, is that I was relocated to the US to expand the business on a global capacity.
Oh, just
So
when you move countries.
And I still thought I fluked that whole relocation for a couple of years. So I guess, like, just off the back of what Tori had said, yeah, I have been in that position where I have relocated a company, and we've did such an amazing job in the US, and we actually overtook Australia, and imposter syndrome still does kick in. And, you know, can you do it again? Can you do it in another country? Can you continue replicating that same strategy over country and country? And like what Tori was saying, it does just come back to this relationship to yourself, and it becomes a reporting tool again. So in that moment of doubt, it's like, okay, I know I've done it. You go back to your list, your inventory list is what I've called it, where you've got all of your achievements. You can actually back yourself. Okay, cool. There's something, my truths aren't aligning here. How can I lift myself back up? And then once you lift yourself back up, you know, because you come in, you're like, oh yeah, I've got this. Let's relocate to every part of the world.
I love it. I love all the neural pathway stuff. It's a beautiful segue. You guys know what's coming. I think I'm conscious of time, and I want us all to leave with something. So Tori and Sarah, I'll let you guys kind of leave. So we're going to do a bit of an exercise, guys. We're going to start rewiring those neural pathways that telling us we can't do something despite all evidence to the contrary that tells us we can.
Amazing.
I'll
Thank
hand
you
it to
so
you.
much. We really wanted to do a visualization with you guys tonight, just so that it's actually a tangible tool that you could take away. And what I really wanted was it to be something that, imagine you're walking into the boardroom, or you're presenting a project, or you're having a tough conversation with an employee, or you have to tell your boss something. What's something tangible that you can do in the morning before you go to work that's going to really like set you up? So if you're all feeling like having a bit of an experimentation with me, and everyone at home, if you want to do this as well. So if we can all just sit up straight in our chairs, please, and place your feet firmly on the ground. And then if we can all please close our eyes, or you can cast them downwards if you feel more comfortable doing that. And we're going to start with 3 deep breaths all together, in through your nose and out through your mouth. So take a deep breath in through the nose and gently sigh it out. In through the nose and sigh it out. Last one and deepest one yet, in through the nose and sigh it out. Become aware of the feeling of the chair underneath your body. Feel your feet making contact with the ground. Notice the temperature of the room and the feeling of the clothes on your skin. Bring your attention gently back to your breath, and if you notice your thoughts starting to wander, know that is okay. When you notice this, just gently bring yourself back to your breath, or back to the sound of my voice as I guide you through this visualization. I want you to think of someone you know who embodies the grace, confidence, courage, and any other qualities that you truly admire. This could be a family member, a manager, a colleague, or it could even be a movie character or someone you follow on social media. Anyone who embodies the grace, confidence, and courage that you desire. I'll give you a moment to think about who that is for you. Now, I want you to picture this person standing in front of you right now. What is their energy like? I want you to see how they move, how they talk, how they hold themselves. I want you to feel and sense their grace, confidence, and courage, and any of the other qualities that you admire about them. If you're having trouble visualizing them, that's okay. Just sense what their energy would be like if they were standing in front of you. How would they make you feel? Take that in for a moment. Now, I want you to look into their eyes and you realize that they make a choice every single day to show up with this confidence. They too have fears and doubts just like you, but they move with their fears and doubts and choose to show up with grace, confidence, and courage. Now I want you to picture them wearing a jacket right now in front of you. And you notice that this jacket has a particular glow about it. They turn to you and say, "Here, take my jacket. I want you to have it. It holds all of these qualities." You gratefully take the beautiful jacket and put it on right now. You notice your entire body is being filled with a glowing light from the jacket. You immediately feel the grace, confidence, courage, and any other quality that you admired in them is now enhanced in you. Because you have all of those qualities within you already. The jacket simply helps you to enhance them. Now, I want you to say the following after me in your mind now. I am confident. I am capable. I am deserving. And I am valued. I am confident. I am capable. I am deserving. And I am valued. Let's take one more deep breath together and really breathe those affirmations in. Take a deep breath in through the nose and gently sigh it out. Gently bring your attention back to your body. Wiggle your fingers and toes, maybe have a little stretch. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes.
Who's got a new jacket for work tomorrow?
Yeah, me too. That's it. We just put that jacket on every day before we go to work or any event, anything that makes you feel a little bit off. And it can be for imposter syndrome. It can be for anything. It can be for public speaking. It can be for going to an event with your friends that you feel a little bit nervous about and just embodying that grace, confidence, and any quality that you love. So just a good little technique.
Loved it.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. We hope we see you back again in 2023 with even more events. If you're not already a member, make sure you jump on the website and become one so that you find out about all of them. First off, we've got big things planned. Huge thank you again to DS once more for not only hosting us, but feeding us and just being an all-round awesome partner. We couldn't do it without you, so big thank you. We're hanging around for another 30 minutes. Yeah, babysitters there for another. We got yes. So please feel free to let's eat the amazing food, have a drink, and keep the conversation going. But thank you all so much.